Some parents are complicit to their child's porn addiction. I never actually knew that it was a sin. You know, with my wife catching me, you are a piece of trash. Almost every Monday, it's a day you want to quit.
Why?
One of my greatest insecurities is
Cast the mic in the house, dropping the mic, preaching fire facts and God's truth, that's right. Raising praises, lifting souls up high, spitting heavenly bars, taking you to the sky. Yeah, he's got the spirit flowing through his veins.
Mike, welcome to the OneStrongMan Podcast.
David, good to be here, man. Finally, huh?
I know.
The long dream, the vision's finally here.
You're the second guest. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And it's a pleasure having you, sir.
Man, it's good to be here, brother. Good to be here.
I know you're a strong man. You're a strong man of God. You know, you're a leader. You lead a family. You lead a church. The way you present yourself. You can definitely tell us Mike is a strong man. But I know that wasn't always the case. That has not always been that case. And you talk about it.
Yeah.
But today, I would love to go deep, and talk about things that actually matter, things that most people don't want to talk about, but the things that are hurting men, the things that are making men weak. And I was one of those. I was one of them. I used to be a very weak man. I used to be and you knew me when I was weak. You met me when I was weak.
Yeah.
And
David, I love watching you, man. Just watching you grow and mature through these years has been an amazing journey, brother. You've definitely climbed some mountains, man. You've definitely hit some high tops.
Hey, praise the Lord.
Praise
and
God, brother.
Praise God.
Praise God.
All glory to Him. And
Yeah.
I know there's more things ahead of us.
Yes.
We're just getting started,
Yes.
like as people say. I would love to dive into your story, like your personal story. When were you raised? Your first exposure to porn? How did that affect you? And how did you get out of there? And what was your journey like?
My first exposure to porn was I was about 7.5, maybe about 8 years old. It's when we immigrated back in '89. We immigrated to the States from Ukraine. We lived in these apartments on Rainier Avenue in Seattle, and you know, as being little young kids, we'd run around, try to find things. We would kind of go by the garbage cans. People would kind of dump a lot of things around there, so we'd go pick them up. You know, I remember one time we found some 3 tapes, videotapes, VHS tapes. You know, the big ones back in the days.
VHS tapes,
the big ones. And so we went to my friend's house and just to see what they were, you know, because you're hoping there would be some kind of karate movies because we loved, you know, action films.
Von Damme.
I mean, Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris
was the guy.
Chuck Norris, yes.
Yeah. So I remember we put it the first tape. It was some kind of talk show. Second was a talk show. Third one was a hardcore porn video.
Wow.
And I remember we turned it on. His dad was there. He saw it. He took it out, and for some reason, my friends knew where, you know, Dad kind of kept those tapes, you know, temporarily until you throw them away. At one time, when parents went to church, we gathered a lot of our friends. We went into their apartment, turned the tape on, and we sat there for maybe half an hour. I didn't understand much, but I'll tell you what, whatever I saw, whatever I was watching, I just enjoyed it. It felt good inside. So that was probably my first exposure to porn.
How old were you?
7.5.
You were 7.5.
Yeah, I was that
Wow.
young. Yeah, so after that, it kind of went away, didn't care much for it until I was about in end of sixth grade, second part of sixth grade is when I started kind of getting back on it. You know, you started hearing about, you know, masturbation, you started hearing about porn. Now your friends, you go to your friend's house and, you know, their dad always has a Playboy magazine under the sink, right? So you'd see those things and now you started enjoying them. They brought a certain feeling to you. So my journey with that is when I came to the Lord at the age of 16, I didn't watch it as often, but you'd still have those moments that you'd kind of slip up or you'd fall. So when I got married, I thought that, you know, I would get married and that the desire would go away. I wouldn't want to do it ever again. Sadly, when in marriage, when you would get into conflict, there'd be a kind of a tension moment. That became like my outlet. That's the thing that I went to when I was upset. It was almost like it's something that just kind of helped you process in that moment, right? It's the place you went in a moment of hardship in marriage, and that happened, especially the first few years. A lot of fight, a lot of tension. That was my outlet. That's what I did. So it didn't go away.
I want to backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that when you were a kid, you were watching and you were enjoying it.
Yeah.
When was the first time you realized that whatever you were doing was wrong? Like, hey, this is something
Yeah.
I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I came to the Lord, the desire kind of stopped because before that time, before I came to the Lord, it was like a everyday type of thing, right? You just enjoyed it. It was something you look forward to every day. So when you came to the Lord, you knew it was somewhere deep inside. You knew, okay, this is probably wrong. I shouldn't do it. But you didn't find it in the Bible. You didn't hear about it in church. The only time that I actually heard that it was wrong and sinful is when I was about almost 18, maybe somewhere 17, 18 years old. I was at a event, somebody talked about it, and I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a sin. Oh my goodness. Like I never actually knew that it was a sin.
So the first time you heard that porn was a sin
Yeah.
at the age of 18.
Porn, it wasn't porn, it was porn with masturbation.
Porn masturbation.
Yeah.
So the two, them two together.
Yeah.
But it's like, wow. So you were 18 years old in the first time.
Yeah, nobody talked about it. It was like a taboo subject in the community, right? Like where the only place you heard about it is your friends, it's the street, it's for people in school. Nobody ever addressed it in church. You never heard it behind the pulpit. You didn't hear it at youth groups. Like nobody ever talked about it.
Wow.
Everybody assumed you were a saint, I guess.
Wow, that is pretty crazy. So 18, 21, you get married.
Yeah.
Your porn kind of came into your marriage as well, because if you were, if there's things are happening, stress. Let's talk about porn in your marriage. How has porn affected your relationship with your wife when you guys just got married?
Yeah, I mean, it made me withdraw from her. It made me withdraw from her. So instead of reconciling faster, I almost kind of enjoyed it. I indulged in it, right? Hey, we're in conflict. There's less accountability now. I can kind of, go to bed later. I don't have to go to bed with you because we're angry at each other. So it was kind of like became like the thing that I did. I almost kind of like enjoyed it, right? Hey, we're in conflict. This is my time for the next 3-4 days just to be alone. Like, don't bother me. Don't expect anything from me. So it made me withdraw from my wife. Second thing I think really affected me in my mind, where it began. You stopped seeing your wife for her beauty and who she is, and you begin to notice everyone around you. Like that's kind of what porn does, right? It's like it's lust. When lust is activated, when you allow lust to get a hold of your heart, you start seeing everything and everyone else around you except your wife. You're not satisfied with your wife, and you're always thinking, what if there's somebody better? What if there's a better experience out there? Like that's kind of the thoughts that begin to go through your mind.
So would you say that your love towards your wife was very skewed?
Oh, 100%.
Like you weren't able to love her the way you were supposed to love as Christ loved the church.
100%. Yeah, because what porn does is it makes you very self-centered. It makes you selfish. It's about me. I want to be satisfied. I want the gratification now. I don't care about you. It's about me. And you're feeding that selfishness, right? You're feeding that. So yeah, it definitely, you're not able to love when it's all about you.
How did you overcome that?
Brother, it was a journey, man. I think that was probably one of the hardest journeys that I've had to go on in my life. With my wife catching me, watching it, that was one of the hardest things that I had to kind of, that shame that kind of came with that. But I think just kind of when I began to pray about it and realize, hey, there's an issue. This is the craziest part, David, is that every single time I would look at porn, like the devil would come and just hit us harder. Like it would create such a deeper friction, tension in the marriage. It's crazy. It's almost like I can pinpoint the moment. The moment we'd get good, but I decided like later on in the marriage, hey, you know what? Let me just have do my thing. I'm telling you, the next day I would always see something would happen between us, like pretty bad. So it's like an open door to the enemy.
Like you would have an argument, disagreement, you would fight.
Heavy.
It would just be heavy.
Heavy. I realized, okay, this is an issue. Okay, I need to get out of it. As I begin to pray about it, I begin to realize that there's certain things that I have to do. And it's the passage that Jesus talks about. He goes, if your right eye or your right hand causes you to sin, pluck it out, cut it off. It's better to go with one hand into heaven than with two hands going into hell. So when I begin to look into that passage, I realized that Jesus didn't really mean cut your hand or your eye off, right? It doesn't mean if you cut your right eye out, gouge it out, that your left eye is going to be holy with fear. Now, does I have no desire to look? Like, no, like you have one or two eyes, you're still going to want to look at porn, right? If your heart's not changed. But I realized that what Jesus was saying is that there has to be this desire, even this I would say is deeper than even desire, like this craving, a willingness to do whatever it takes to be free, right? There has to become a desperation. Hey, I am not okay like this.
Has to come from within.
It has to. Like, you have to be like, okay, I'm done. It's a desperation. And this is the thing. I am willing to do whatever it takes.
What did Mike do? What did you do?
So what I started doing, the first thing is I had to cut off the source, right? What's my source? It was my source was internet. My source was the phone. So I had to get covenant eyes on my phone, covenant eyes on my computer. I had to have accountability. Started talking more about it to my friends, people that God's brought into my life about it. So that's what I started to do, and I realized that I started doing a lot less. And then I think when I introduced the life of fasting, that's when they killed the desire for it. Because you can still have, covenant eyes, but there's still a desire somewhere deep inside. Like, if I had it, I'd look at it, right? But I think what really killed the desire for it at all, like where I don't need passcodes or anything else now, it's fasting. Is when I begin to fast 3 days, 7 days, and so on. It kills the desire.
So the identity, Mike's identity started changing.
Yeah.
That's
changed
if I
me.
was to kind of like define what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it changed me completely. Like, now it's like I don't care for it at all. Like, it's there. It can be somewhere next to me. I just don't care much for it at all now.
That is real, because I mean, it's and I can relate to the covenant eye things. I remember this is like 2000. I don't remember what year it is, but anyways, in my office we had like 4 computers, and I had covenant eyes on every computer. And at first, Irina was she was like the accountability person. And one day something happened. They released some kind of update, and the covenant eye just blocked all the computers. So like nobody was able to access internet. So there were 4 computers all dead. The guys come to work and they're like, well, David, we can't really do anything. It was just so awkward to like, well, I guess, go home. And it was just, I remember that moment of like shame and guilt, because my identity wasn't changed. I couldn't like openly talk about it. I felt guilt, and but it's definitely a tool. So I'm actually really, that's cool that you actually use that tool. It's a very, very, I think it's a very powerful tool you can use to help you on that journey.
You will never be free if you're not desperate. You have to do whatever it takes to be free. That's the only time you'll be free. If you're like, well, it's inconvenient. Well, I'm sorry. If it's inconvenient, then you'll still stick watching porn, right? Like, you have to give up everything. Okay, even if you have to give up my phone and get a flip phone, I will do it for the sake of being free. Like, that's what Jesus means about cutting off the right hand and gouging out the eye. There has to be desperation in the heart if you want to be free.
How did your wife take all this? I mean, I know it was a journey for you. It was the hardest thing this was the hardest thing you have ever done. How was it affecting your relationship? How was it affecting your wife? Like, how did she react to all this?
I mean, she caught me only one time, and that was it. Afterwards, I did not open up to her. I didn't talk. I found my accountability people outside my marriage. I just know my wife, she would not be able to handle it. She would not be able to hold my hand walking through it. Every woman's different. I knew my wife wouldn't be able to do that. So I had to find other people. So she was, I would say, mostly in the dark in that season.
But that's really cool that you actually that's really cool that you actually looked for accountability, because we're designed to help each other. As men, we're created to be in a community. That's how healing actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, we say it in the church all the time, right? You go to God for forgiveness, you go to God's people for healing. Like, if you want to be healed from things, God's given us each other. As iron sharpens iron, right? I think in that, walking in the light, that's where freedom is at. And that's walking light with each other. Like, there's power in community.
You got to be desperate. You said you have to be desperate enough to change. Is that like an addict hitting the bottom and saying, hey, I just got to do whatever I got to do?
I would say so, because I think there comes a moment, right, when you're looking at your life and you're like, I think I'm a scumbag. I think I'm a knucklehead, right? Like, what am I doing? I have kids. Would I want my son to have to fight this? Because the thing is if you don't kill it, your kid will have to fight it, right? Like, you can't speak into your kid's life if you're struggling with it. And then you look at your wife and she sees you maybe in a certain light, right? And you're like, man, if she only knew what I actually do. So it just, you come to that moment in your life that you realize, like, man, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be defined by this. I'm sick of it. I hate what I'm becoming. So I think it's those feelings that you begin to kind of feel within. And then plus it affects your relationship with God, right? Now, there's no boldness, there's no desire to read the Bible, no desire to pray, no desire to serve. Like, so it begins to affect you. Like, man, I don't want to be like this. Like, it's gonna hold me back from my purpose, from what God has for me. So yeah, when I begin to experience that, I felt like that for me was a bottom where I'm like, hey, I gotta get out of it. This is not okay. I don't want to live like this.
What does it take to be Mike? I don't know, because you have a unique personality. Like you're always full of energy. People flock to you. Like,
I mean, yeah, David. I mean, for me, I'm a very relational guy. I am very dedicated. I'm a peacemaker. I'm a peaceful guy. Any tension, any conflict, any arguments, it paralyzes me. I cannot operate. I cannot live. So, so I one of the things in my life that I believe is one of the most important things for me is to be who I am at home, with my friends, at church, if I'm vacationing in an all-inclusive hotel, for example, right? To make sure that I'm the same person. And I think that lifestyle is what people begin to see. It's what your wife sees. It's what your kid sees. When your kids see that, that's when you begin to influence them in a very powerful way. When they see this discrepancy, when they begin to see this dualistic life, right? Or dad's at home, at church, or he's a man of God, or he's preaches so powerfully, but at home I'm treating their mom and just horribly, right? Or I'm in vacation and I'm just getting drunk. I'm cutting people off. I'm cussing people out. Like, I think if my kids were to see that, it would affect them in a completely different way.
You're a public person because you're out there and on the stage and how do you deal with criticism? Because I mean I'm sure that affects you.
I actually like it. So let me put it this way. I crave constructive criticism. I like it so much that, for example, when I preach on Sunday, on Tuesday with our preaching team, our staff, we talk about my sermon and say, hey, that was good. That could have been better. Your voice was too high here. You're a little bit too much. Maybe not the best illustration, because I feel like criticism makes me better, right? But this is the criticism that I've allowed people to come into my life, to speak into my life.
So you guys basically play the tape and you guys kind of...
No, not the tape, but just people take notes.
Okay.
Like, they come, if they were not in service,
interesting,
they'll listen to it, but everybody kind of comes to the meeting with some comments. Like, so I've allowed people close to me to give me constructive criticism. Anybody outside of that, I honestly don't really... I don't allow it to affect me. Somebody once told me, well, something that I maybe told me, but I've heard and I've kind of developed, is you have to have thick skin and a soft heart. Because if you do anything that's significant, you will have critics.
What hurts the most when people give you criticism? Like what hurts the most, though?
What hurts the most?
Yeah.
What hurts the most? What hurts the most from people's?
Yeah, from people. When people give you criticism, yeah, like what hurts the most, though?
I don't know if it's even criticism. People can tell me, like, the way it is, David, let me put it this way. And this is, I don't know why this has really defined me. There's nothing that you can do to really offend me. Honestly, I'm very unoffendable. Because it's never between me and people, it's always between me and God. Let me put it this way. If somebody comes to me and goes, Mike, you are a piece of trash, I will look at you and be like, you know what? Thank you so much. And then I will say, you know what, Lord? I needed that humility. Thank you, Lord. So for me, it's if anybody does anything or say something, it's never between me and them. It's if God has allowed it, I needed that.
Go ahead.
So this is why for me it's easy to live. It's never between me and people. If someone hurts me, if someone cheats me, if someone steals from me, you know what? If God allowed it, I'm okay. Like, I don't allow it to get to my heart, because my heart is the most important thing I have. My heart is the most important thing I have. That's why I need to have that thicker skin, because my heart needs to be soft, because that's the place of worship. If I allow bitterness, resentment, anger to come into my heart is going to taint my ministry, is going to taint the message. So that's why for me, my heart is the most important. Bible says, out of most of all, protect your heart, because out of it flows the wells of life. So this is why I protect my heart. So when people come and they can say things to me, I'm like, hey, you know what? I needed that. Thank you. Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming up and giving me this compliment or this criticism. I really needed that. Thank you so much. I never saw it that way. Just it's like that's my heart. I'm very easy when it comes to that. But I don't give weight to everyone. That I give weight to the criticism to my close friends. It's my wife. I think my wife's word is probably the heaviest in my life. When she says something, I take note. Like, okay.
When was the last thing she said something that like really hit, like it was like deep, like it cut?
No, I mean, my messages, she was like, hey, I don't think you were on top of it. And I'm like, what do you mean, girl? I was like, I was flowing in the anointing, like, what do you mean it wasn't? Like, so anyways, but I'll have that. But she's very good about giving me constructive criticism.
So would it be fair to say that you don't have any insecurities?
I do have insecurities, of course.
What are your insecurities?
My insecurities.
And the reason why I want to talk about this is because, as we talked about the porn addiction and how you have to hit the bottom and fasting and just renewing the whole Mike, because it goes back. Whatever you were saying, I think you were talking about identity. As a man, if your identity in Christ is weak and you have all these insecurities, which I think everybody has them.
For me, I think public speaking is my insecurity.
But you're always on stage.
I know I am, but that's the hardest thing for me to do. I look at other people that are like great communicators, and I want to sit and never preach ever again, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I will never be so eloquent. I will never be so good like them. How do they just take that thought and, oh my God, I can do that. So one of my greatest insecurities is public speaking. It's the hardest thing that I do.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think leading a meeting, it's the hardest thing for me to do. Like, people don't know, but anytime I come to a meeting, I am prepped. I am researching. I'm thinking. I'm planning. Okay, I have to speak. Like, when it comes to preaching a message, I prep a lot. Like, I try to get ready. Before I preach on Sunday, I'll preach it on Saturday night. I'll preach it on Sunday morning at 6:30 in the morning before I preach it for the first time at our first service. Like, I prep a lot, but it's the hardest thing that I do. I wanted to quit many, many times simply because of I'll never be a good communicator. It's hard. So anyways, that's a big insecurity for me.
How do you stay grounded though?
Yeah.
Your person, practical things.
Yeah, Dave, I think for me, my biggest thing is that my love for the Lord. I love the Lord. I delight in the Lord. Ministry is not my identity. It's not take ministry away from me and I don't know what to do. No, my identity is Christ. I love the Lord. I genuinely love him. I delight in him every day. I'm driving in my car. I'm talking to God. I'm walking to the grocery aisles. And I'm talking to the Lord in my mind. I love the Lord. I am genuinely in love with Jesus. That is who I am. That is, if you cut me, it's Christ. It's in me. That's it. This is the reason why I preach, the reason why I do what I do. It's not to prove something or to cover something. No, it just comes out of my love for Jesus. This is part of the call that he's given me. So I've learned to embrace even my insecurities, is to lean more into God. I have to lean into more. Lord, I can't do it, but I need you, Lord. So that's why I'm very humble about it. I don't feel like I got it all together. So it just makes me lean more onto him.
What are some practical things you do on daily basis
Yeah.
to lean into God?
If you were to be in my house at 6:00 in the morning, you would see me every single day with my Bible on my chair, back patio. I'm reading the Bible. I'm talking to the Lord, and I'm drinking my coffee.
Even if you went to bed at midnight or 1:00?
Yeah. Every single day, I'm reading the Word. 99% of the time, 99.8% of the time, I'm reading the Bible. That is, for me, the most important thing that I do. to be connected with the Lord. My time with the Lord. Just as, Lord, I thank you for this day. I love you, Jesus. I surrender my heart to you. Like that for me is the most important thing. I cannot imagine living life apart from the Lord, like apart from his word. I can't. I would not be able to do what I do or be who I am, or God's made me without him. So it's this deep dependency on him daily.
What happens if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel I don't feel like reading. I don't feel like praying. What do you do then?
See, for me, I've established a habit now. It's become part of my life to where back in the days, I had to struggle with that. I wake up and I just don't want to. You just don't want to. But that's the thing. You got to go do it. In the moments when you don't want to do it, when you do it, that's the moment you grow the most. So in moments when I didn't want to, what I did is I would go out there and I would read 10, 15 chapters.
You'd force yourself to
I
read
would
more.
force myself more until I would do that for days, like 3, 4, 5 days, a week. Next thing you know, I wake up in the morning and my heart is drawn to go and read the Bible. But anything you do in life that's important, you have to be intentional. Things that don't matter, you don't have to try. They'll come at you. Things that are important in life, you have to be intentional about them. With your kids, with your wife, when it comes to your time with the Lord, to church, you have to be intentional about the things that matter in life.
How does one lead a church and they're so open about their past, like your porn past? How does one do that?
You have to be the authentic you. Somebody once said, we wear a mask to appear strong, but only when we take it off that people are drawn to us. Right? There's something about leading out of a place where, hey, this is what God's done in me. Because every person's on a journey. I'm sorry, you don't become a pastor by simply because you never sinned. You're a pastor because God has done something powerful in your life, right? He's changed you. He's transformed you. You had a God moment, right? So for me, being a pastor, it's something that God's done in you. He's brought you to a place where now you love God's people. And honestly, I'm still, I don't think I'm ever going to be at a place where you're like, hey, I'm done. I don't need the Lord now, right? I think I'm good. I've attained that holiness and that sanctification that I don't need nothing else. Like, no, I think as long as I live in this physical body, I'm going to be leading into the Lord, and there will be moments of temptation. The devil will try to get you here or there, but you just lean into God. You walk in purity and holiness and transparency. That's kind of part of life, So you can be a pastor, you can be a bishop, you can be a regular businessman, and the devil will try to get all of us. You know what I mean? Because that's his goal.
What is one thing the Lord is working on your heart right now, like in this season, in the season of like your life in 2024?
I would say embracing my my weaknesses, in a sense, like my insecurities, just embracing them, just being more of who God's called me to be, not comparing myself with other people, because I think in that comparison trap, it's when really it begins to hold you back, and you don't appreciate what God is doing, and what He's in you and He's doing through you. So it's just embracing the insecurities. The Lord, this is who you've made me. Help me be the best version of what you've created me to be.
As a pastor, what hurts the most? Like, I know you get feedback. You said you're okay with feedback. You get the inner circle. Obviously, you talked about your insecurities, but what hurts the most? I'm sure there's moments when you come home, you're like, man.
David, I would say this. Many people don't know this, but almost every Monday, it's a day you want to quit.
Why?
It's because you've given yourself completely on a Sunday. Like the moment I come to church, 8:30 till about 2:00, I give myself 100%. Mentally, I'm exhausted, especially if you preach 2 services. Mentally, I'm exhausted, and that's the moment the enemy comes to you every single time and tells you, quit. Nobody cares. People don't need a church. They don't need a pastor. Look at them. And I will names will come to my mind, people that didn't come to church. Nobody cares. Why are you doing this? This is something that I probably experience every Sunday night and Monday. It's the hardest day. But I think what hurts the most for me, what really, it's like a dagger. And once again, I try to pastor myself through this, but it's when people come to church and they leave. They just leave. Some, very few, will be respectful. They'll come like, Pastor Mike, thanks for caring for us, this and that. God's calling us into that play season or that church, But hey, that's so cool. But it's the people that you've kind of given your heart to. You've prayed with them. You've talked with them. Maybe you've helped their marriage a little bit, and they come and they're like, hey, and they leave, and they're gone, and some of them will not really pick up the phone call. That is probably the hardest thing, because I feel like as a pastor, I failed them. Like God brought them in our midst, and I failed. I didn't do an adequate job, or I didn't love them enough. I didn't care for them enough. Like that for me is the hardest part. Though I tell myself this all the time, hey, you can't please everyone. You can't love everyone. Like I know all this, but deep in the heart, it's like a dagger every time. It's just the hardest. For me, it is the hardest thing that I endure as a pastor. Like, and it doesn't matter how many times, like if somebody leaves, it's painful. And I thought about it. I was like, why do I feel that? And I realized that as I look like into my heart, I am fully committed to every single member at our church. Like if someone's gonna call, or someone's in need, or someone's hurting, I'm gonna be there. I want to help them. I want to pray for them. I want to care for them, because I care for every person. I really do. Like every person that God brings into our church, it's like, oh my gosh, they're part of this family. They're part of this community. I want to love them so well, knowing that, like, and I care for the people, right? So I'm 100% committed to every person. But when on the other hand, the person just doesn't even care to, hey, thank you, I'm leaving. They just leave and don't even pick up your phone call. You're like, dude, that is hard. Like that's probably the most painful thing about being the pastor for me.
Hey, thank you for the heart. That's a very, very. It just shows that you have a good heart. Like you have the heart for the sheep, for the people.
And
that's a beautiful thing.
People are beautiful, but it can get messy sometimes.
It does. And we're humans. We make mistakes. That you answered my question. How do you deal with it? That was great. Let's go to kind of a different segment about pastoring and leading, transitioning to leading a church. And weak men, they can't lead. Weak men, they have no vision. What has changed? I think men have become weaker and weaker, because I know myself, I was a weak man in every way, physically too, and that's something I'm working on daily now.
Hey, 82 push-ups, brother. That's incredible, man.
I still got the belly though.
Hey, I got the challenge. I'm being challenged here.
Let's do it. My formula is simple. It's 2 push-ups for every year that I'm alive. I'm only 35, but I just do extra just because, hey, when I'm at 40, I want to be at 90 push-ups. Yeah. So when I'm 50, I have to be able to do more.
In that case, I should be what? 80, 84?
84, yeah. 84. So you got 2 push-ups for every year that you're alive. So it's a good challenge. What do you think changed in the past 20 years as you've been ministering? I'm gonna slow adjust this like this. Mm-hmm. I know you've been a pastor for how long now?
I think 15 years now.
Okay. What do you see what has changed in the past 15, 20 years of ministry, like between men? Have they become what changes have you seen?
I mean, there's a few things I've seen. I mean, from the kind of cultural kind of aspect, right? There's like this whole agenda to feminize men, right? Just to make him look more feminine, begin to do your lashes, begin to paint your fingernails. You're like, hey, where is that coming from? So you're starting to see that, which kind of creeps into men not taking responsibility, lack of leadership, ownership, right? In their home, in the church, in the things that matter. Like that's the sad part, right? Is men can show up in their workplace, and have a great successful business. But goodness, when you look at their spiritual life and their family life, sad. Like you've really missed it in the places where it matters most. So I've seen just the lack of that ownership, leadership, taking responsibility in the areas where it matters. A lot of men that I've seen, they've just given up. They've lost that fight in them to say, hey, this is God's entrusted me with this. Let me fight for it. I've seen a lot of men become addicted to alcohol, addicted to different drugs and things. Sad. To cope with the stress, instead of leaning into God more, they're doing, what the people in the world do, to alleviate the stress and whatnot. Yeah, so it's been sad to see, where men have kind of come straight in the last 20 years.
For a man to have vision and goals and sense of direction, and
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, this is where I'm taking my wife. This is where we're going as a family. This is what we're doing. This is how I'm going to shepherd my family. Someone needs to model for them, because we learn behavior. Like as a father, my kids are learning. They're seeing how can a man, and what are you doing yourself to model that behavior? Hey, kids, this is what we're doing as a family. This is what we believe in. What are some practical things? Like, what do you do in your family?
The thing that I always, has become like a way of life for me. It's model what you want repeated. Model what you want others to do. The best way to lead is to be that's why even Paul writes, be an example in everything. So the best way to lead your family, the best way to lead people around you, your business, your friends, is to model. Hey, what does it mean to love the Lord? Like that's the biggest thing. What does it look like? And I think when people begin to see that, they begin to follow that. Because men are attracted to strong, godly men. They are. Like we want that. Like I know men want to get better.
That's the formula. That's why everybody's attracted to you.
Thank you, David. but you know what? People want to get better. Like I would say, men, they do. They want to, but I think the lack of the leaders, the lack of role models, I think that's hard.
Do you think we have a lot less leaders and role models in our time
Oh,
now?
100%. Oh yeah, and especially the last, you can say, decade is how many strong leaders have fallen, right? Living a double life, having your spiritual life, your Christian life, and then you have your, second life, right? The hypocrisy. Oh, it's definitely been, so much has been exposed, and it's like you're seeing less and less of these godly, strong men that are leading well. And man, I think this is the call. This is the call in our time to step up and say, hey, I'm going to lead well, lead my family well, lead my sons, my daughters well. Yeah, we definitely lack him.
Who's your role model right now?
Honestly, the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing my dad did such a great job in raising 7 of his kids. My dad raised 7 of us, and every one of us is serving the Lord. Every one of us is
All
involved.
7 of them.
All 7 of us are involved in the church, serving in some capacity.
Wow.
So, and what did my dad do? He was not a big preacher. He was not a leader at a church. He's the most quietest man you will find. But I'll tell you one thing, he just simply lived out his faith daily. And honestly, that was the most attractive thing that he did. He just modeled to us what it meant to love his wife, to love the Lord. Every day he was in the Word. And the way he treated people, like my dad was a mechanic, and in the time, 90s, people would, they would get cars, secondhand cars, right? And they would call him, and the way he would treat them, the way he would care for them. We saw that. Like, even if we didn't understand it, it left an imprint on our hearts. All of us are walking with the Lord. So I think that's been like my dad's been a great just inspiration for me. But God has just placed different pastors around me in different seasons that I've looked up to, that have spoken into my life. It almost feels like every 7 years, God brings somebody into my life to where I'm able to look at them and talk with them, be open, transparent. They're speaking to my life. So I'm grateful for the people that God's placed in my life.
Why is it so hard to talk about pornography at church? I know you spoke about it at off the stage many times. Like, you shared your story, but why is it so hard? Going back to earlier, you said the first time you heard that masturbation was a sin at age 18. That's crazy. Why is that topic such a taboo? And we know, I know at least about 65%. It's probably in the high 70s now. This was like 5 years ago. In the high 60%, men are watching porn every week, every month. Why is that such a topic that people avoid talking about?
Because I think a lot of times we've created church to be a place of performance. Everybody comes to church with their best foot forward. Everybody's here to impress. Look at my outfit. Look at my car. Look what I've achieved, what I've accomplished, right? So it becomes a place where we almost begin to, it's like a show and tell, right? Let me tell you.
Let me show you my car.
Let me tell you my strengths and what I've done. Look at me, right? And I believe that, and I think that's wrong. I believe that church should be the place where people's stories are being told, where people talk about some of the things. Hey, I've come to church and I'm here to get well. I want to be made strong. So that's the first thing. I think just the second reason is just I think that like pastors and leaders, they have a hard time being open, vulnerable, and transparent with people, right? We talk about these things that are sometimes are not as practical, right? These abstract things, but not really relatable to the things that we face in our daily life. So for me, being a pastor, and I travel and speak to a lot of youth events and churches. I try, like, that's one thing that I've tried to do, is to preach about the things that people are going through. Talk about the things that people struggle with, and be very open about my past. Be open about the struggles that I'm going through. And I think people relate to that. People connect with that.
Are you afraid what people will say?
I think I don't really let that affect me. Like if I sense in my heart, I don't do for the just let me just sound cool, whatever. No, I sense the Lord in every service touching upon certain things. So if this is what I feel, that this is what needed to be said. And I've had people that, hey, thank you for your vulnerability. It brought me hope. It gave me hope. It gave me hope. I remember first time I ever, when I was at City Hill, first time I ever talked publicly about our marriage issues, where how me and my wife struggled and we fought and this and that. Somebody came to me and goes, dude, how could you embarrass yourself like that publicly? And I was like, hey, it is what it is. Literally, the next person comes to me and goes, hey, thank you. A young couple came to me and goes, thank you for giving us hope. And I said, you know what? I'd rather live for that than for the first one. I'm not here to please people. I'm here to please God. So I don't know. Like I'm okay with that, man. If I can bring hope to a few more people, I'm good, man.
Amen. Not going to ask you anything that's inappropriate from a sense of like disclosing anything that's private, but in the past 10 years of your ministry, have you seen the rapid jump of like porn and addictions between young people and families and men?
I would say I've seen it before. I mean, I think the thing is that it's become a lot more accessible to people, to kids. And I mean, okay, Lord, help me here not to get frustrated. But I think what surprised me more than anything is how naive parents are. Is that they think they can give their kid an iPad, an iPhone, with no protection, no filters, and they think that their kid is not going to watch or see nothing bad. Baffles my mind. Some parents are complicit to their child's porn addiction.
Wow. What do you do about that? As a church, what can we do different?
I think we start talking about it, start educating the parents and say, parents, like, I'm just letting you know that your kid is going to watch porn. Like, it's not will they will. But so how do we begin to talk about it? Talk to your kids about that. What kind of measures and protection do you put, right? Like, and if you can help your child, like, I'm not saying that they will not stumble or fall. They will have here, there, friends will show them, but we can help them properly to go through these moments in life when they do fall and they are exposed to it, and how they come and what they say, and we can help them, because so many kids, when they're exposed to porn, they don't know what to do with it, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper, where it starts with just porn. Next thing you know, they're watching who knows what, and they get so deep into it to where by the time we finally get to the bottom of this, you're like, oh my goodness, like this is way too deep. It's not even, they're not even looking at girls, they're looking at who knows what now. I mean, there's some stuff out there. So we have to be in the forefront of all of this as parents and know, hey, they're gonna see things, okay, but let's help them and say, hey, when you do it, this is the steps, and you walk them through. You're on top of it. Parents have to be. You cannot be naive that they won't.
Yeah, and it takes a strong father, a strong leader in the family to do that.
100%.
How did you talk to your kids about it? I mean, you have 3 boys.
I got 3 boys and 2 girls.
Yes. Tell me about that conversation.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure you have done it. So
I've done it.
Tell us more about it.
So Sam, my oldest, he's 19. Actually, today's his birthday.
Happy birthday, Sam.
To turn 19. But I remember when he was about 9, I started asking him this question, a probing question. Hey, Sam, so what's the difference between boys and girls? And he was like, Dad, I don't know. Like, and I could tell he didn't know. Like, I could see. He was about 10 or 10, 11. And I'm like, hey, Sam, so what's the difference between boys and girls? Like, Dad, my friend told me down the street that boys have penises and girls have this hole. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay, now I understand that he's starting to hear things. And that's when I knew I needed to have a conversation with him. So I remember we were driving from Oregon. We lived in Washington, in Seattle at that time. And we were in a car later. It was like later, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And we were driving. And I remember so Sam, let me talk to you. And that's when I actually had that conversation with him. I said, hey, this is the way God created man. This is the way God created woman. This is how, conception happens. I mean, some of the things he said to this day just still baffles my mind, right? I remember we were his uncles. They got married, and they didn't have kids. They don't want kids at that moment, and Sam would ask, "Hey, so you guys have any kids?" And he's like, "No, just pray for us, and that's what his uncle would say, "Pray for us," So when I told him how kids are made, he's like, "Dad, did you tell Uncle so and so like this is how it's done? Like you don't have to pray. You can actually there's another way to do it." So, hey, we've had. Anyways, that was.
I love the innocence.
Dude, I'm telling you, it was hilarious. Like, anyway, so but that was kind of. I was always kind of probing. Yeah. Okay, where is he at? Okay, he knows. He's heard something. Okay, let me have a conversation. And I remember, like, what really encouraged me at that time. Is after I had that conversation with him. A week later, he runs home and goes, "Mom, give me the phone. I got to call Dad." So he calls me. He goes upstairs into the room, closes the door, and he calls me. And he goes, "Dad, we had this class in school, and they were talking about wet dreams. And they're talking about, like," and he told me everything, what they were teaching in that class.
Wow.
And this it made me realize, you know what? Because I broke that ice, right? I had the conversation. Now he's more open to talk about things that before would have been uncomfortable for him. This is why it's so important for parents to be ahead of the game, to know where your child's at, have this conversation. My wife had a conversation with my daughters. She took him out, had breakfast with them, and she had that deep conversation. So we have to be in the forefront of these conversations with our kids.
I love that because I love that. And I recently had a conversation with a man. He called me saying, "Hey, David, I just caught my son watching porn." It's like, what do I do about it? And he's panicking. He's freaking out. And what I realize is we take our baggage of this crazy porn experience. Like for example, I'm using myself as an example. And we think our kids that's how they're gonna think. They're innocent. Like the kids are so innocent. We don't have to tell them the whole horror story.
You don't.
You gotta tell them the basic stuff. Like, hey, this is how things are. This is how things happen. This is how babies are conceived. Tell them the basic stuff. And we don't have to take our presuppositions of like crazy sex experience or crazy porn experience
100%.
And drop that on the kid. No,
100%.
They're innocent kids. Just tell them the basic stuff.
Yes.
Don't over exaggerate, and that's enough for them.
100%.
And if they have more questions, they'll ask you.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that's the thing. Like, yeah, 100%.
As a spiritual leader of a family, what are some practical things that you do that you model for your 5 kids, for your wife?
Yeah, man, my kids get to see a little bit of. I mean, my kids see me all the time, right? They see me the way I am when I travel. We travel together. We do things together. So what's important for me? For me, is not to be a hypocrite. That's the most important thing for me. It's just to be real, for them to see the same dad everywhere. That for me is important. So for me, what's important is my time with the Lord. I want my kids to see that I genuinely, me and mom, we love the Lord. Like I want them to see that. So in my conversations, reading the Bible with the boys, not always, because I mean I'm not always home, right, in the evenings, whatnot. But when I am, have deep conversations, see how they're doing. That's important. Another thing is that love the church. We love the church. For us as a family, we don't skip church. Maybe if I go in the boonies somewhere, there's no church with 2 miles, 2 hours around, radius around us, I might not. But even if we go to SoCal on a vacation, on Sunday we find a church. Why? I want to model to my kids that this is the most important thing that we do on Sunday morning. We don't have a morning when the kids like, I don't want to go. Oh, I don't feel like going. No, the only way you're not going is when you have COVID. Other than that, you're going to church. And we've modeled that from the moment the kids were born. Sam was 2, twins were born. Kids were young. Every Sunday we went to church. Every Sunday we went to church. Getting the kids and coming to church early because there's not a lot of room. We did that every single Sunday. And I realized that now kids don't hate. Some parents think, oh, well, if you make them, they're going to hate church. I'm sorry, my kids love the church. All my kids are involved in the church because we've modeled, hey, this is important. And when we went to church, we were excited. We get to serve. We have to, oh my God, this is so hard. We get to serve. We love God's church. We love the body. We speak so highly of the church. And because of that, all kids are involved. So that was important for us to love and be excited about church. For me, it was important to love their mom. I mean, I try to be as affectionate as I can with my wife, right? I come home, I'm gonna give her a kiss, and all the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, oh Dad, oh," they're closing their eyes, but they're all smiling when I do that because they love it. They love it when I come home, and I love their mom. Another thing for me, and this is a thing that I kind of shared this behind the pulpit on one of the Sundays, but we got a chance to take our kids. We went to Europe. It was like, the girls turned 16, Sam turned 18. We were celebrating our 20-year anniversary all within like 3 months. So this was like a little getaway with the 3 older kids. And we had the deepest, most beautiful conversations, that you can imagine to have with your 3 older kids. And I remember we asked them, hey, what's one of the things growing up in the home you loved about our family, loved about us, relationship? And my kids are very open, kind of like their dad, My daughter goes, Dad, Mom, the hardest thing that we had to see and hear is you guys arguing. Because we do argue. Wow. We are human. Like, we have moments when it gets tense. And my daughters are right above us, so they can hear a lot of things, right? When we tend to get a little bit, open about our feelings and some things, right? But then my daughter said, but Dad, but the most encouraging thing we saw is that, yes, you guys had a conflict. It's how fast you reconciled and how you were able to love each other afterwards, even stronger than before. And she goes, this gives me hope for marriage, for a good marriage in my life. Like, yeah, you're going to have these moments. But we're showing our kids that, yeah, you'll have conflicts, but you can reconcile and you can love even more afterwards. So that's important for me. And I think another thing is just it's having open conversations with our kids. One of my favorite moments is when at night, they come home and they come into our room. It's 11 o'clock sometimes. We're sleepy, but their ears are open. Mm-hmm. So what do? We talk. And we get into some deep stuff. We talk about marriage, talk about relationships, the guys that they, should be looking at or for. I mean, we go really, there is nothing off the table. Like, you can't talk about.
With your kids?
Yeah. We talk about anything and everything that they want to talk about.
How do you get to that place?
It starts early. and you probe them sometimes. You kind of intentionally go a little bit deeper. Did they get uncomfortable? But now, see, I've pushed that line a little further, right? You have pushed a little bit further. That now they're comfortable to ask, deeper questions. So I'm a very open guy. Like for me, I don't get awkward. Oh my God, sex, and I get red. Like no, I'll say some random joke or something, right? I pushed the bar to where the kids are more comfortable now. And then the second thing is that the way we react, whenever kids would say something, we never overreacted. Oh my gosh, don't say that. You can't do that. Even if it was like, oh my gosh, like what is this?
They learn something new from a school.
Yeah, like we would never be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Like we just never overreacted. Like really, hey, interesting. Tell me about it. Why do you think this? Like we can any topic, anything you want to talk about, bring it up. And if you hear something that's stupid or crazy or like rated R, bring it to the table. Let's talk about it. Like, and I think just before kids went to school, like having like, hey kids, you're gonna go to school. You're gonna like public school. Like there's gonna be some parents have mom and a dad. Some will have 2 moms, 2 dads. Do you know what this is? Let me tell you what this is, right? And I would already have these conversations before. So that somebody came. We went to school. She has 2 moms, but they know now, right? So I think it's these open dialogues, open conversations. It's what's created this atmosphere now in the evenings for them to come and be able to share with us everything. Nothing is off the table.
So you were very intentional about it. That's what I'm hearing.
That was important for us. Yeah.
So that's what I'm hearing. You were very, very intentional about that.
Very intentional. Because you have to have that to have a good conversation to have deep conversations, to know where the hardest of your child is. Like you have to have that. If you're just keeping it like just surface, you'll never know what they're going through.
How do we model that in church and for other men, for other couples to do that?
Have these conversations. I think with David, what you're doing, right? Hey, YouTube, hey, watch it. I think it's just bringing an awareness that, hey, because I don't blame a lot of people because they've never had examples. They grew up in homes where the word sex is not mentioned. So you get married and you're like, man, all you know is what you watch from porn, or that's all you bring into the marriage, right? Into your bedroom. So like our parents never talked about these things. So, and some parents, so the kids grew up, they don't know better. They don't know that there's a different way to do certain things. So when you bring an awareness, when you talk about these things, and say, hey, this is another way to do things. And like, wow, I never saw that. Now they're being challenged, right? We share wins, we share stories of how we've done it and the kids turned out well. Like, wow, look at that family. They raised kids in this crazy world and they love the Lord. They got married, have beautiful families. Wow, like look at that. Like we gotta share success stories. We always share the bad ones, right? My kid got, drug addict, and we elevate them, right? Like we elevate these crazy stories, but how about the good stories, right? Let's share some of the wins. And hey, this is the way we've done it, and this has worked. This is what my parents did to me, and this is what has helped me. We gotta have open conversations, open dialogue. I think that's important.
I love that. And Mike, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being a strong man. Thank you for leading with example. And last question for you is, what does it take to be a strong man?
To be a strong man, I would say very simple. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Learn to delight in the Lord. Delight, where you can sit and just think about the Lord and just enjoy his presence. The greatest thing that we can pass on to the greatest inheritance we can pass is not wealth, but it's the rich faith that you have as a parent to pass it on to your kids. That's the greatest treasure you can pass. So, but you can't pass what you don't have, right? Like Peter said, Peter and John, temple, silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have, I give to you. We can only pass on what we have. And if you have faith, God, if you have this faith in the Lord where you love him and you're genuinely pursuing him, right? You're delighting in the Lord. Like, I'm not gonna, why I say delight, because man, we make it about religion sometimes. Oh, I do the right things, right? It's not even about the right things. It's about loving the Lord, delighting in the Lord, enjoying the Lord. Like that is important. So delighting in the Lord, just loving Jesus. Oh my God, like I just love him. Lord, thank you that you called me. Thank you that I get to serve you. Thank you that I'm going to spend eternity with you, Lord. Thank you. Like that kind of posture, right? So it's loving the Lord. And the second, I think what's important is to live a transparent life. Walking in the light. What does that mean? It means there's no dark secret in my life. There's no dark secret in my heart. There's no certain special closet that I have that's dark, right? My little addiction, the little thing that I do on the side. No, my heart is completely in the light. I think that is so important because if there's something that's there, it's like a little nail, a little hook that was got. That's it. Like, and so I don't know how it kind of goes, but it's something along the lines. I've heard this phrase: "You are as sick as your darkest, as your secret." Like that's true. If there is a secret that you have, it will always hold you back. It will always. It's like it will paralyze you. You'll never be able to become a strong man. You'll never be able to do things that God's calling you to do if there is this sin. Like even Dave, I think the Psalms it says that David goes, if there was a hidden sin, you would not hear me, right? It just cuts off that relationship with God. And the third thing, what's important is accountability. It's having men around you that you can be vulnerable, you can be real with. Men that you have brought into your life, they can speak into your life. And I'll say it this way. If you don't have a man in your life that can come to you and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong, and his voice is strong enough in your life to where you will change your life or change what you're doing, if you don't have that, you're missing out. It means you're by yourself. Because a lot of times guys like, yeah, I have men in my life. Well, can they speak into your life? If they will tell you to do a certain thing, will you follow that? If you will say no, then you don't have men in your life.
Do you have that man in your life?
I do have people like that in my life. I do. And that's one of the things I do. I'm on the phone with them weekly.
Wow.
I'm calling them. Hey, how are you? Just always back and forth. It's not like once a year. It's people. I remember even when I lived in Seattle and the most critical moment of my life that I'm looking back, if I would have done something a little bit differently, I would not be where I'm at today. It would have paralyzed me. I called a mentor and he told me, this is what you do. And I said, please don't tell me to do that. Please, I don't want to. He goes, you have to. And I said, okay. And because I listened, it saved me. I am where I am today because of that voice in my life in that specific moment. So it's important to have people in your life. Accountability is important. Having people in your life is important. And this is one of the things enemy wants to do is he wants to separate us, make you by yourself. You know, if he's got you isolated, he's won 90% of the battle. But if you can have men around you, so I would encourage you, be in a small group, be in some kind of like invite people and say, hey, let's grab coffee, let's grab lunch. Pursue that. If you don't, if someone's maybe watching, if you don't have that, pursue that. Invite. Don't wait. Well, no one's called me. Here you go. 3 months. Ain't nobody called me. Nobody's invited me. You'll never have it. You have to want it more than anybody around. You pursue that, and just think, hey, who are the people that God has really made like stand out? Like as I look at them, like, ooh, like that's a person. Like that's a person. Ask him, hey, can I meet with you once a month? I'll buy lunch. If it's important to you, do it, and you will see out of that relationship, God, they're going to speak into your life. You will be strengthened because of those relationships.
Mike, thank you for your time.
Dude, it's so good to be here.
Thank you for your story. Thank you for being
I
vulnerable.
love sharing my story. Thanks for inviting me here, bro.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
I love being real, man.
And being a good, strong man. Appreciate you.
I love it, bro.
Thank you.
It's good.